Welcome to the Jeff Knows Inc. Entrepreneurial Podcast with your host, Jeff Lopes. Jeff has over 2 decades experience as a serial entrepreneur, building brands like Kimura from his home basement to a multi-million-dollar global brand that has sold over 250,000 pairs of boxing gloves. Jeff's here to educate, guide, and drive you on the process of bringing your ideas and dreams to reality with the inspiring stories from some of the top business minds.
Welcome to episode 150 of the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lopes. Super excited to have on today Dan Caldwell. Dan is a serial entrepreneur. Most of you will know him as PunkAss, the former president of TapOut. Great conversation, everyone. Sit back and enjoy. We are live on the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Lopes. Super excited to have on today Dan Caldwell. What is up, brother?
What's up, bro? How you doing?
I met Dan a while back through a mutual friend, Brian Ward, and incredible dude. If you follow him on,
to do this for a while,
for a little while, but if you follow him on IG, there's tons of layers as an entrepreneur, but there's tons of layers as a dad, man. His cutest little kids, and they're front and forth of everything he does now, which I love. Let's talk about, there's one thing you had mentioned, and we had a conversation a while back. I'm going to throw this really sideways right off the bat. You're a police officer, and that's always been in the back of my head when you say that. How long ago was that? How long were you an officer for? Where? And let's talk about that a little bit, and then kind of take it on to your first journey as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, well, I always thought I wanted to be an entrepreneur growing up. I had started little businesses, as a kid. Even in high school, my whole purpose was thinking about how I'm going to start some sort of business to get, with a friend of mine or something. So we were thinking about maybe we were going to start the snow cone business, and we were out looking at places, and I would ditch school to go talk to this guy, this Subway owner who'd owned like 3 Subways. He's the only guy I'd ever met that really owned a bunch of businesses beside my grandfather. So I didn't really know anybody like that. I grew up in San Bernardino, which was, when I graduated, the murder capital of the United States. So there wasn't like a lot of people that I could really talk to about it. And I was something about owning your own business. I don't know where I didn't really know anybody that owned their own business. So I don't know where I got that from, other than watching. I've always been into a lot of documentaries. I'm still into documentaries, watching other people who've had success in their life. And so my mentors were watching documentaries and talking to the couple people that I knew that had businesses. And then I actually transferred my high school to a neighboring high school. I grew up in kind of a rougher neighborhood, but there was a really nice city down the street, or what was a nicer neighborhood. And their high school happened to, it's like, I grew up in kind of an all black neighborhood. And I'm like, why are the one white kid high school have all these great classes that you could take? Because at their high school, there was like small business administration. I haven't taken it. I'm at a hotel. Yeah. And they had like small business classes, and they had a law enforcement elective class, and all these great classes you could take in their high school. We had like wood shop, that was like the only class you could take in our school. So I used my friend's address to go transfer over to this school. And I thought the purpose was so that I could take, when I heard that they were starting this small business class elective, I was like, I'm going to go to that high school because I wanted to take the small business class. And when I got over there, I needed a couple more. It was my senior year, so I needed a couple. I'd kind of finished most of my stuff, not good grades. I rarely had good grades, but at least I was finishing my classes. And I needed a couple electives that I had to take. So the next one I took was law enforcement. And something about law enforcement, it's not the same as owning your own business, but you are free in the way that you're like a free thinker. You get to go out and kind of, make your own decisions, and you don't have too many people standing over you at the time anyway. So
at the time.
Well, once you start to make decisions, then people all hover in and start telling you what to do. And it's actually why I got out of it, why I didn't end up liking it as much. Because I realized that follow through wasn't there, that you didn't, once you made one decision, then everybody came in and kind of rolled through you and started taking over the scene. And then all of a sudden it wasn't your decision anymore.
Yeah.
So I took this law enforcement class and I was just blown away. It was taught by this female homicide detective who was the first female homicide detective in San Bernardino County. And that was the county that we lived in, just outside, neighboring county to LA. We butt up against LA County, the biggest county in California. And we're the biggest county in California, San Bernardino is. And she would tell these stories about, chasing bad guys through orange groves and jumping out of your car, and chasing the student, tackling them. And, I was like, what you get to do what? I guess I always knew that, but cops hadn't started yet. So this was pre-cops.
Yeah.
So you really didn't have, those type of visuals. So the most you saw was like at night, you'd see a bunch of, this happened in LA or that happened. And you have a bunch of police cars and lights twirling and, some cops walking around, but you didn't know I didn't really think about what a cop actually did. So when she's telling all these stories, I'm like, that is what I want to do. That's the type of excitement I want in my life. Like, we're sitting here in these small classrooms with books in front of us. And all I knew is I didn't want to do that for a living because I wasn't good at it. It just didn't interest me. So when she said that, one thing she said was, you can go join this Explorer program. And even though I've been really entrepreneurial throughout my life, and I always see there's a connection, even in my law enforcement career, I've always seen all the police officers always had some small side job or small business that they were trying to start, or ideas or whatever it was. So any police officer you ever meet will always have some little side job or side business he's thinking about starting. So that I think there's some connection there. I haven't really thought about it too much, but I think there's a connection there.
Let me dive in 2 seconds. This is funny. I just want to say this too. One thing, obviously, you don't know about me too. I mean, there's a couple of things. Obviously, with my other brand, Kimura, where we're very aligned. Where you had TapOut, I started Kimura where January 2006, which is martial art and boxing equipment brand we've had for 15, 20 years, 15 going to 16 years. But my dad always wanted me to be a cop, and I went to college and I dropped out of law enforcement in college. All my buddies are officers, detectives now, like guys I met in college, but I'm missing 3 credits to graduate law enforcement college. And that was my dad's dream for me to be a police officer. So it's crazy when you're telling it, it's very aligned like that, but continue that. Sorry. I just wanted to throw that in there.
There is, right? There's a connection.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I don't know, I don't know where that connection all comes from, but it always seems like a lot of these business people all circling around the same thing. And I think it has to do with excitement and just, we're always looking to have our own, control our own destinies and have excitement. And also maybe there's a piece of it too that I realize more now, looking back, is that wanting to help people, wanting to better other people's lives.
Yeah.
And there's a piece of that that's always in an entrepreneur, and there's a piece of that that's always in a police officer.
Yeah.
It's, the excitement's still, part of it.
Yeah, of course.
It's definitely you want to help people. And I remember thinking that because I grew up in a really bad neighborhood where we had been, as a kid in high school, me and my brother got in a shootout in front of our house, somebody trying to break into one of our cars. Been in fights, tons of fights in front of our house. All my friends were black kind of growing up, even though I was kind of I was kind of have my feet in 2 crowds. All my friends were black, but I also had a skateboarding crowd because I was one of the skateboarders in the crowd too. And so I had my feet in both groups, and I was always friends with everybody pretty much. And so I kind of enjoyed that, but I didn't know any better. I didn't know that we were poor, really. I never thought like that. We had a great family. My parents are still married. So really close knit. We'd grown up in the church, going to church, every Sunday. And so I grew up like that, and I never felt like I was missing anything other than as I started to grow up, I started to see how other people had nicer neighborhoods and didn't have to get in shootouts in front of their house, and didn't have their mom. My mom was mugged on the front doorstep of our house and purse ripped out of her hand. She was kind of beat up a little bit. And so, our house was broken. We'd come home one day and, all of our stuff was all ripped out of our, all broken up. And I remember coming home one day and all my dad's guns were laying out on the bed. And I was like, why did my dad leave all the guns out on the bed? What I didn't realize is that somebody had broken in and they carried all the stuff that they could carry and they got away with it. And they had the guns still there. They were going to come back and grab the guns, but they didn't, when I got there, you know, I guess I should have been more mindful. They probably could have jumped through the window at any time. And I just wasn't ready. I was like, why are the guns now? I walked around for like 30 minutes, you know.
How old were you at that time? Roughly.
I was in high school. I was probably about 16 or 17, somewhere in there. 15, 16, 17.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'd come out and all these rifles were sitting on the bed. I just thought, oh, why did my dad leave the guns out? Because he wouldn't, you know, he didn't really leave guns around. It was like if we wanted to see a gun, I'd have to ask my dad. My dad break it out and kind of show it to us very safely. And never touch these. Don't ever touch these. You know, if you ever see a gun, don't touch it. I just kind of grew up like that. So a few times I got to handle a gun. My dad would take me out and, you know, let me shoot.
Yeah.
So anyways, you know, I think a big part of me wanted to better and create a better life for my family, not only my family, but also, you know, the things that hurt and things that I saw in the neighborhood when we were growing up, which they bulldozed a lot of that neighborhood now that, you know, if I go back and look at it, the house that I grew up is still there. But a lot of that neighborhood, I actually lived in a home and we kind of butted up and were kind of surrounded by some apartments. And so I was lucky enough to grow up in my grandmother's home, an actual home that my mom had grown up in too. So she had lived there since she was like 15 years old. Yeah. And so it was a nice childhood. I don't want to say that it was bad because I never thought I was poor. I never thought any of those things were abnormal. I thought, oh yeah, everybody gets in shootouts in front of their house. You know, everybody's houses gets broken into regularly. But so I never thought anything like I was disadvantaged or anything like that. So when I saw this opportunity to be a police officer, I was like, I'm going to go try this. And I thought this was going to be fun. I went and joined the Explorer program in the local sheriff's department that was there. Yeah. And it was really cool to be. I mean, I never thought nowadays they would cringe at some of the things we did as explorers. You know, I remember, you know, the deputies would jump out and get into foot pursuits. And they would tell me to drive the car and follow them, you know, so follow me in the car. That's all I'd hear before they jumped out of the car chasing this dude. And so I'd jump in the driver's seat and go ripping out after this guy, you know, trying to follow him in the car and then pop the shotgun when we get there, come out with a shotgun like I'm a deputy or something, you know. I'm dressed in a similar uniform too. So the only difference between our uniform and theirs was two things. One, we didn't have a gun on our sides. And two, we had this little rocker underneath the sheriff's deputy patch. Yeah. So other than that, somebody just looking at us immediately would have thought we were police officers.
We have them in Toronto. They're called auxiliary officers. Exact same thing. They don't carry a gun, and all they have is a little checkered stripe around their one of their alarms. And that's the only difference from everything else. You can't tell a difference. Yeah, they're called auxiliary.
They put them in like light blue.
No, there's no difference in uniform still. Yeah, they're called auxiliary, and usually a lot of guys will do that for a year and a half, and then that's their foot in the kind of in the door after you get on. Right.
These are explorers, so you have this. These are kids. It's like a Boy Scout troop. So you're like, this is like 12 to 18.
Oh, that young.
Yeah. Oh, these are kids. Yeah. It's a Boy Scout. You're literally a part of the Boy Scouts, but they're called explorers. And so I think you have a Boy Scout membership, but you're an Explorer Scout with the Sheriff's Department. So it's a kids program on getting kids excited to become police officers at some point. So it was crazy, some of the things that they would let us do, you know, as these kids. We were older, you know. At that time, I was like, I was probably set. I didn't join till I was 17 years old or 16 years old. So I was like 16 or 17 years old this time. And but it was just crazy, and I just had so much fun doing it. I'm like, what? We're chasing bad guys. I'm 17 years old. I'm chasing guys with shotgun in hand, driving a car. It was like insane. And this happened a lot. We were in a really bad area. We were always, there was always action going on. Yeah. And so it was fun. And I just said, this is what I want to do. And so I put myself through the police academy. I was working at I don't know if you guys have Rite Aids up there, but back then they used to be called Thrifties.
Thrifty.
I'm sure people
Yeah, thrifty
Yeah. So
shops.
back
Yeah,
then
there's
it was
tons
called
of them. Yeah,
Thrifty.
yeah,
I worked at Thrifty, and I was also a DJ. So I was kind of an entrepreneur already. We were one of the 2 DJ groups that DJ'd all the high school dances in the area. So we were DJing every weekend, and I started saving my money so I could put myself through the police academy.
yeah.
So right after I got through, I put myself through the police academy. I ended up getting hired on as a reserve police officer on the department, and then eventually they picked me up as a full-time police officer. So I worked as a police officer for like 7 years, and during that time, well, before that time, actually, I stepped back. I first got hired on as a security officer for a school district. So I was like, those school guys that walk around.
Yeah.
And I met my really good friend Charles and my partner in TapOut, and that's where when I first started there, he was already working there, and he trained me at his school. And then I went on to go to another school, but we stayed friends. We started talking every day. We both had this martial arts thing that we would talk about, and we wanting to train. He was really good in Taekwondo, and so he was kind of teaching me the whole kicking thing. I had taken Taekwondo before, but I kind of got into boxing. So I was teaching him some boxing because in Taekwondo they didn't use very much hands. No. So we'd meet afterwards. I ended up I was renting a room at a friend's place who was a police officer. And so I was renting a room at his house and kind of getting indoctrinated in law enforcement by living with this guy.
Yeah.
And just getting excited about becoming a police officer. And he would tell me what I need to do, but I was still the security guard at this high school. And so I was talking to my friend who didn't know he wanted to be a police officer. He was just doing the security guard thing, trying to figure out what he wanted to do with his life. And I had talked to him. I said, he was 6'2", he's a lot bigger dude than I am, in shape, really good Taekwondo guy. And I thought, man, you should be a police officer. Like you're the look. I want to be 6'2", I want to be that guy. So I said, you should be a police officer. And plus he was really good with people. And I just thought, man, you'd be a great police officer. And so I started talking to him, and, we had this friendship, and eventually I talked him into becoming a police officer. So we both got hired on about the same time.
I had no clue.
And I worked for the local police department, and he worked for the sheriff's department. And so nobody ever knew we were cops in TapOut. So eventually we, as the company started to grow, initially we were just selling on little tables.
Yeah. So you guys were still officers when you guys launched the company.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. No, I had no clue. That's crazy. Yeah. And how long did you, how long of a period before did you guys both quit the department at roughly the same time?
He quit before I did. He got into this IA investigation.
Yeah.
And, sorry, I'm on my phone.
Yeah, no worries.
Up on my phone. He got caught up in this internal affairs investigation, and this guy came through and spat on, as much as I can remember, spat on him in his face when he was in the jails. And all the sheriff's department worked the jails for the first few years before they get put out in the street. And police department goes straight to the street because they don't have no place to go. But, But he was working the jails, and I remember him telling me about the case. Basically, this guy spun around, spat in his face, and he sent him for a little flight, like across the room. Yeah. And the guy hit a wall and knocked himself out, and he ended up in this whole situation. And they had kind of said they were kind of leaning into disciplinary action because they were saying, hey, just a spit in the face isn't like a real assault, Yeah. And he's like, dude, this guy turned around, faced off with me, like he's going to punch me. And they pretty much, nowadays things might change a little bit, but back then, if somebody squares off with you, you punch them in the face, you knock them out. It's a fight. You're going to square off with me, we're in a fight. Yeah. And so I'm not letting you punch me first. We're in law enforcement. We don't fight fair. You punch first. And so it's law enforcement isn't pretty. A lot of people don't understand
of course
it.
Not.
People criticize law enforcement big way because they see police officers punching people. But dude, it's not a pretty game. You have people trying to kill you out there. And go watch law enforcement shooting videos for about 2 hours. because there's plenty of them out there, and see what law enforcement goes through. People don't understand. And so it was just a crazy time. And so he ended up just quitting. He was like, I ain't going to go through this. I'm out of here. So he quit. And that was about 2000, I want to say, right around 1999, 2000. We started in 97, and about 1999, 2000, he quit.
So Charles had just quit, and he didn't want me to quit. He said I needed to stay on because I need to finance this business, because we're gonna do this TapOut thing.
No pressure.
Yeah, like he goes, we're not gonna have no money if you don't stay on. So you got to stay on. You got to keep financing the company. And so I think at that point I kind of saw it different, because I knew it had to be real, because his life depended on it. And then I kind of saw what he was going through, and I remember how hard it was for him. And I was like, I've been in situations really close to that before. I got into a really bad fight in the department one time in the middle of the night. This guy tried to escape, and we got into a big knockdown, blown out fighting for like 5 minutes until some other officers could get there. We're fighting in the back of the station. The dispatcher screaming, "Get in here! We need an officer!"
That's crazy.
Those things happen, and it was all on video. So it was kind of like, after I started to get the upper hand, I was getting a little revenge in there. It was like this guy, because the guy cold cocked me and almost knocked me out and tried to take my gun, and it was crazy. It was a pretty crazy fight. And so after I started to get the upper hand, he started to get a little, I started dishing out some revenge here. And, so it's a crazy business, and people want you to be a robot, and you're not a robot, you're a human being.
Yeah.
And so I just saw the writing on the wall.
I'm going to say something too. When I was in law enforcement in college, there was one detective that was actually on suspension, and part of their hours was teaching at the college. And the first day of class, I sat there, and I was already running a business at this time. I was running a company called Million Buys at the time. And it was a fitness consultation business. And I remember the first thing he said to me was that he stood in front of the class. He goes, "I'm going to tell one thing to everybody. I want everybody to remember this." He goes, "The day you guys become an officer, always remember, you will rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6, no matter what situation." And you stick in that head, and it's essentially, as an officer, like, you have seconds to react in a dark alley, and people don't get that. And there's so much heat on officers right now, where, like, my buddies are all officers, right? And none of them, they, like, one of my closest friends, he's like, "I'd rather work behind a desk than be on the street, because everybody's got a camera. Like, you can't even breathe anymore without somebody recording you." So the life has changed so drastically in the last while for officers, right? So I get that. It's just a situation where it's just, you're put in predicaments where you have to react, and sometimes your reaction might not be right, but it was right at that moment for you, right? Which is crazy, right? And then you're judged after by it.
That's the truth. Yeah, people can sit back for the next, year and critique you and every move that you made. Yeah. But at that time, you had a half a second to do it. Yeah. And you got adrenaline going. And,
100%. Yeah.
This you're mad. That somebody is trying to kill you or doing whatever they're doing. So you react in ways. You're a human being. Yeah. And you're going to react in ways, and then you see how people come after people. Like, even if you don't react now, you can go to jail. We saw 100%, that in some of the cases that that are happening out there. And I'm not saying the George Floyd thing was, that guy was definitely wrong. Like, watching that, even as officers, you can watch that going, 100%. Oh my gosh, what is this guy doing? Like, he's whatever he gets is coming to him. But I feel bad that, in some ways, you don't want, it's a weird situation as a police officer. You're like, dude, what was this guy thinking? This guy's going through his full life as he probably had been a police officer for a while. And now he's in all this trouble because of one mistake he made on one day. Like, was he a good police officer? I don't know. But, maybe he wasn't, and maybe he had what was coming to him. But sometimes you think, dude, good police officers make mistakes. I mean, there's times that I could think back where I would say, hey, if they would have been critiquing my whole 5 minutes of this whole situation that went down, I know I would be in trouble, because I made a mistake. I probably shouldn't have did that. I probably should have did this instead of that. And, we're going to make mistakes as police officers.
Yeah, I mean, you could talk about that as humans too. I mean, it takes one wrong decision, one wrong move, one wrong turn, and you could put yourself in a predicament that your life changes in a split second and you're never 100%. Going back. Right. So, I mean, you could go to that whole,
just as a police officer, you're in those situations every single day.
Yeah.
All day, every day, and now these guys, they have cameras on them.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Which is really good. I think it's a great thing for police officers. I wish we had a camera on, because you act a little bit different. It teaches you to think, okay, I'm on camera. I need to make sure that everything I do is on point. And so you're thinking different at that time. I think it's a great thing for police officers, and it protects them, because 99% of the time we're doing the right thing as police officers, and we get a complaint or something afterwards. And it was like, we're in the right. Show the video, because we're in the right. Like, I wish I had a video of that whole situation, because I know I was doing the right thing. And it doesn't always look pretty as police officers. It doesn't look pretty. Like I said, if somebody runs up and gets in my face, I'm going to hit him in the face. And everybody's like, oh, that police officer hit him in the face first. He hit first. Yeah, that's what I'm going to do. If he hits my face, I'm going to hit him first.
So let's fast forward now to what year did you make this TapOut a full-time thing with yourself as well? And then you had a third partner. So let's talk about that. And then when he came into the picture as well.
Yeah. So Scrape came on early on. There was times, because I was working, there was this little show, and specifically because of this one show in San Pedro, California. It was at a little tiny club, this little dive bar, and they put a little tiny ring in there, and they would let these people fight. And it was kind of an underground fight. It was really an underground fight. There was they were kind of testing the borders. Nobody knew who should be going in there and breaking this up. So the police officers are like, as a police officer, you're like, this isn't my job to go break up fights like this. It looks like a legal event here. So these guys were selling tickets to what looked like a legal event inside of this small little club, but it probably wasn't legal at the time, because it was illegal to be throwing those types of events. So nobody knew, it was a bunch of
it was a gray lines. It was a big gray line at that point.
Yeah. So they're throwing this fight, and we would set up a little table there where we were kind of the sponsors of the fight at this TapOut company. And you got to remember, early on, because we knew so many fighters, we were getting our clothes in these UFCs. We were like, oh, I know, Jeremy Horn's about to fight. So we would contact his manager, and we'd be like, hey, we'll pay you like $500 if you can put it on, Jeremy while he fights. But we knew all these people through friend of a friend of a friend, or they were somebody we trained with or whatever. So we had our clothes in the UFC. So a lot of people looked at us as kind of like this big company, even though we weren't a big company. We just had this opportunity to get clothes on these fighters who were fighting in the UFC for like $1,000 or $2,000. They were fighting for nothing, but they were fighting on television. Nevertheless, it was this recorded television that we still have this video today. So it's great that, we were able to get in some of those early shows, starting in like UFC 18, I think.
What year was that in? Because the first time we really started sponsoring UFC 2 was 2006. So same thing. We were getting 2000. This is like 1998. Yeah, so you're way before us in that period, but it was crazy. Yeah, even 2006, 2007. Like, I remember guys, and I would talk to them still till this day. Some of them I'm good friends with, like Elliot Marshall and these guys like that, and Canadians, TJ Grant, where they would go in there and win a fight, and they're making $1,250 or $1,500 winning thing, which is crazy when you think about it. It's insane. And the bare fact, the early days, man, is insane how these guys they would spend 3 months of their training camp. By the time they pay their trainers, their things, bring a couple extra guys up there, they were in the hole at the end of the fight, even with it's crazy.
Well, the truth is, they were doing what they love to do.
Yeah.
And so they would have done it for free. They were like, I get to train, and to them, that was their thing. They didn't have to have a real job. They could train, and somehow that money, kind of like when we have businesses and all the money goes to paying for all the employees. We have enough money to eat. We have enough money to, keep the lights on. And so we're okay. We're like, oh, this is great. You know, we can keep all the lights on, pay our people, put the lights on, you know, eat, we're good. Yeah. And that's how these guys were. They wanted to be able to do what they love to do, and they enjoyed every minute. As long as they were able to get from point A to point B and still keep the lights on, they were good. And that's what we helped them do. We helped them be able to, you know, our $500 or $1,000 that we were paying these guys
made a big difference. Made a big difference back then.
Yeah. It allowed them to be able to, you know, catch some meals, get some training, you know, whatever they were doing that they needed to keep the lights on to keep going and keep training.
Where did you get the nicknames from?
So I mentioned I was a skateboarder.
Yeah.
Well, early on, I got this tattoo on my lip that says PunkAss because
you have that. I didn't even know that.
Yeah. Because I didn't want my parents to see it. I grew up, you know, if my parents saw that I had a tattoo, they would like kill me. So early on, you know, when I was in high school, I didn't want my parents to see my tattoos. So that was the one place I could put it where they would never find it.
How much did that hurt? How old were you when you got that?
Oh gosh, I was probably 17.
16. I got my first hat. I got my first hat on my 16th birthday.
Oh my gosh. See, my parents would have.
Oh, they didn't know. They didn't know for the longest time. And then my mom, it was a Superman tattoo. And I still have it. I worked a way around it with other tats. But when I first got it, they ended up seeing it about a year and a half later. And literally my mom came and she was rubbing it.
Sorry.
Is that right? No worries. My mom was rubbing my arm for a good 5 times. She thought it was a sticker, like a little thing. She did not believe it. So it's funny that you said that. Yeah, it's crazy. But
so anyways, I was basically just trying to hide the tattoo. And so that was why I got it. And then Charles, it actually just fit our characters. We're all trying to figure out what the whole purpose of it was early on when we first started doing shows. Charles had a kind of a moment where we got done with the show and we'd handed out all these flyers to all these people. And there was such a cool photo on it. He kind of expected people to keep them. You know, it was kind of like, oh, these are like awesome looking flyers. We were so proud of them because we had done this great photo shoot. We had brought in a photographer to come in and do this great photo shoot. And we really were happy with the photos we took. And then people had taken the photos and thrown them all over the ground. I'm sure some people kept them, but you know, it was like when you get done with the show and there's like hundreds and hundreds of these flyers all over the ground, people are stepping on them as they're walking out. And he was like, dude, that's never going to happen again. And that, I remember over the few weeks, I think even there was a few days before that we had went to this little club. And Scrape, our other partner, he had worn this big wig, this big hair that he's kind of known for. He had worn it to this. He's already 6'7". So with his hair, he looked like 10, 6. He's almost 8 foot tall or 7 foot tall. And so all the girls were talking to him, and he was kind of the life of the party. Yeah. And Charles had kind of examined this and said, hey, we need to be those people. We had grown up kind of on Kiss and so those that had some influences there. Charles was always a big fan of Kiss. And I think we just kind of rolled up all these themes and all these ideas into one thing. And we said, we wanted to be, part of it came from Damon John and his For Us, By Us campaign, his FUBU campaign, where him and his buddies were all the models on all their clothing. Yeah. So all their tags that hung on their shirts back then, that was a big thing. Yeah. You don't see that as much now, but back then you had a tag hanging on a shirt. And it would be like a picture. Yeah. And that picture was usually a model or some cool scenery with somebody wearing the clothes. Well, for FUBU, it was them, the founders of the company. So it was that, and the fact that those influences of Kiss and those ideas that we didn't have money to pay models and other people to wear the clothes really. And it was always difficult, like, hey, do we have the rights to this? And, if you have these other people, we really couldn't pay them very much. So It's like you pay somebody something just to show that you paid them for their time, but it wasn't a lot of money.
Yeah.
So we just thought, wouldn't it be a lot easier? Excuse me. If we just modeled our own clothes.
Yeah.
And so we just put all those pieces together to start doing it ourselves.
I love the bare fact that you guys, self-branding in the last, I would say, year and a half, 2 years, has just exploded. And in late 1990s, early 2000s, you guys already were doing the whole self-branding and the whole, even when you think of like commercials like Dosaki beer or whatever you call it, like the world's most interesting, essentially your characters became like these real life like personas that everybody knew you guys, which is crazy that you guys put that and it worked and it clicked and it took off to the where like it's insane how it happened.
Necessity though. It was out of necessity, but it was at the time, the whole point was, and I'll tell you, we used to talk about no one will forget us when we walk through that door.
Exactly.
We're not just we wanted to be known for the owners of the company, but we wanted them to look at us and go, that's TapOut.
Yeah.
So when we walked through the door, not that we were, I don't want to say we were, because we didn't want to be bigger than the fighters. We wanted to give all the light to the fighters, but we wanted to be known as somewhat equal in a way where, obviously we weren't putting our lives on the line like those guys were, but we wanted to be seen as kind of like, hey, these superstars walked in with these superstars. Now we're connecting in that way. We have that mutual connection. And it turned out good for us because, we ended up getting that television show and a lot of those things for that reason. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And when we would, even early on, not that, you can only grade, I'd say when you start signing autographs, it's kind of like, it's a weird thing because you're like, I'm not the guy who just fought in the ring, those guys fought in the ring.
Yeah.
But we started realizing early on that what we were doing was working because people would start wanting to take pictures with us and wanting to, get autographs and stuff. And we're like, we're just the owners of the clothing company, right? It's like,
but it was working.
I can remember thinking that maybe people like feeling almost embarrassed that somebody was asking us for an autograph. Like, why do you want my autograph for? But it was cool. It turned out to be really good for the company.
Oh, it was. You guys had an amazing run, and it still is. There's so many things I want to talk to you about. We're going to talk about your children, talk about your wife, talk about what you're doing business wise. So I just want to just gap a little part of just Charles. Obviously, he's no longer with us. Like, talk a little bit about Charles, like what he meant to you, and until this day, what does he mean to you? Like, how much of a part of you, and he'll always will be. So, like, let's talk a little bit about Charles as a person.
Yeah, Charles was about 8 years older than I was, so I always looked at him as kind of a big brother. Yeah, I always felt like everything he said came from wisdom. And wisdom is different than just knowledge. It was wisdom. And he was a big reader of the Bible. And
interesting.
He read the Bible all the time. And when I first met him, the very first time I ever met him, I can literally remember walking up to him and he was still reading. He had a little Bible in his hand and he was still reading and kind of didn't acknowledge me until I'm standing there and he's finishing this passage that he's reading. And then after he was done, he goes, hey, it had never happened, like he was never reading. And I didn't really acknowledge it because I didn't know what to say. I was like, what is it? I didn't even know what he was reading. He was just kind of standing there. And so I think he recognized the wisdom of the Bible and a lot of that. There's so many life lessons in the Bible. And I think he was just smarter he was smart beyond his days for sure. And I always looked at him as like being able to, when I made a decision, I always felt like, is this a decision Charles would make? Is this the same decision he would make if he was here?
Yeah.
And so I always looked at him as that person for me. He was a big brother, somebody I looked up to, somebody I learned from, and just an incredible person all the way around.
I love it. Your wife, where'd you meet your wife?
We met in Vegas. It was kind of a weird situation because she started an architectural concrete company. So at the time she was running this multi-million-dollar concrete company. And I,
was she running out of the US or in Canada?
In Canada.
Okay.
So she's Canadian.
Yeah.
But they have a big event down there called the something concrete, some concrete. It's a concrete event. I don't know.
Vegas has a show for everything, right?
Yeah. So it's some concrete event, and she's out there for this event, and I'm out there for a fight. And we had been talking here and there. Like I say she's trying to pick me up on Twitter, and she says I'm trying to pick her up on Twitter. The truth is I'm trying to pick her up on Twitter, right? So, I'm like talking to her on Twitter, and we ended up going, oh, you're in Vegas? Well, I'm in Vegas too.
Yeah.
You got to meet. And I remember it being late, and I was with somebody. I had some girl with me, but I was like, but you got to come, come hang out with us. So she came and met up with us, and I'm with somebody, but I'm like, dude, first time I ever saw her, like, I was like, oh my gosh, she was, way above my, pay grade. And I was probably a little intimidated, but I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, like I got to know this person. And we were friends for a long time.
Yeah.
And eventually we became more than friends, but I think it probably took about 6 months. And
how long have you guys been together now?
Oh, probably about, we've been married almost 5 years. It'll be 5 years in November, but we probably known each other for about 9 years, something like that. Yeah. I just always wanted somebody, like I had somebody before I was with somebody who was very quiet and submissive and just kind of did what I didn't interject into any of my conversations. I couldn't talk to you about business.
Yeah.
She never had a opinion on anything really too much. And it was, there's pieces of that are really good in relationships, for a lot of reasons that it keeps the relationship smooth, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a one-sided relationship.
Yeah. But
what I learned in that is that sometimes that person isn't happy because you're making those decisions for them. And, I was after running a company with 200 employees, you get very, like, my decision's the right decision.
Yeah.
You start delegating things and you don't realize it, but it's not good for a relationship. And so this person that I was with, that situation didn't end up working out.
Do you mind me asking how long were you married before?
I was engaged. Well, okay. So I was in a previous relationship where I was never married, but we had 3 kids together. That situation ended, but we were kind of like back and forth. We had 3 kids together. Not a great situation. I wasn't in a place. I wasn't in love. I don't know why I was staying in the relationship. I question myself today, but I loved my kids more than anything in the world, so I wanted to do the right thing in a lot of ways. I thought it was the right thing.
Yeah.
We ended up breaking off, and I got together in another relationship. I only have a few relationships in my life. So it was that. And then I got in another relationship where they're together for about 5 years, and we were engaged. And then that relationship got broken off. And then about a year later is when I met Ildiko, my wife now.
How old are your children from your first relationship now?
They're 20, 22, 17, and 14.
22. How old are you?
I'm 50.
You're 50. I thought you were younger. You're 50.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm 44. So my daughter's 15. So yeah, we probably started roughly having the kids around the same age, give or take. But yeah. So what does it change? Like, obviously that relationship didn't work out. And like you said, a lot of times people become numb in a relationship and you stay for the wrong reasons, which is not the right reasons, because you might be staying for the children, but you're actually probably causing more harm because they see the conflict. And I see that all the time. And I've had a couple of buddies go through really, really messy divorces because of that, because they hold on for too long and then they don't know how to separate. And when they do, too many hurt feelings are happening. Now that you've had, I see you on Instagram, see everything with your 2 little ones. where's your mindset as a dad now and your mindset as your dad then? How has it changed? Has it changed?
Well, in a lot of ways, it's kind of unfair because in the situation with my previous kids, I was so tied up in my business that I had I had put myself in a place where I said, I'm at war. And even though it's not like real war, it's war in the way that I believe that if I don't fight with everything that I have to build this company, it's never going to become anything. And I'm going to have to shoulda, woulda, I wished I would have, and talk about the good old times, how this, I almost made this happen.
Yeah.
And so I think in some ways my kids, I don't know. I wished there's not a lot of things I wish that I would have changed because I still was there for my kids' birthday parties and there for games. I made every game. If I was home, I was at a game.
Yeah.
If I was, if I could see my kids, I wanted to see my kids whenever I could.
Yeah.
I always made time to see my kids. Now the situation is a little bit harder sometimes. Now when I'm starting to have other kids from another relationship, there's a little more what's the right decision here? What should I be doing here? Where should my attention be? How do I make this work? Especially since I'm living further away too. There's no real perfect answer many times. It's like you think, I want to try to do my best. And sometimes that's all you can do.
Yeah.
And not everybody, you're not going to always make everybody happy. You just have to let everybody know that you love them and you want to do the best that you can for everybody. And you're always there for them if they need something, but you're never going to make all the right decisions that make everybody happy because you have two different lives now.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's hard. The truth I would tell everybody is do it right the first time. That's what I hope everybody can do is do it right the first time.
Yeah. Easier said than done sometimes, right? For sure.
Yeah. But like, if you're in a good relationship, try not to screw it up. If you have all the right, if you're in love with the person you're with and you're having kids, dude, be very mindful. You're in a great situation and don't screw it up. Like do everything in your power to keep that relationship solid. That's where, if I think I would have done that right the first time and I would have had the knowledge that I have now, I would have never screwed that up. You know what I mean? But I think I got into a relationship where I wasn't necessarily in love with the person I was with. And my mind was definitely going in a different direction already. I was going, I was building something and we didn't see eye to eye on the things I was doing.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't going to work out. It was never going to work out because it shouldn't have been there in the first place.
Yeah.
But if you're in a relationship in the beginning and you're with somebody you love and they love you, don't screw it up, man.
I've been, yesterday was, this will obviously air a couple of weeks later, but yesterday was my 18-year wedding anniversary. 18 years, buddy. Yeah. Time flies.
That's
18
incredible.
years. And we've been together for probably about 6-7 years before that too. So it's been I'm 44. So more than half my life I've been with this lady. Right. And we have a really good relationship, right? She's a very independent woman, which I love.
Mm-hmm.
And, but we have our relationship is I've been an entrepreneur since I was 19. So she knew she was coming into right from the day one, but I also knew she was very independent. We've been married for 18 years. We don't have one bank account together. We never argue.
Really?
We never argue about money. Everything's flow, and everything just works. It just works.
That's
so
great.
If you have it, you just gotta cherish it because it does. Like you said, it's hard to come by. Very, very hard to come by. When you get it, you have to cherish it.
You have to make it as important or more important than your business, and it has to be one of those pockets in your life.
100%.
Like you have to pay attention to it because if you just think it's, this is just me, I'm in a relationship and what I do is my business. If you think like that, you're going to screw this whole thing up.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, when we're young, lots of times, we can, even a clock's right twice a day. Right. So we can do some right things to keep moving forward. And if you have a good girl, she'll run with those punches, But the truth is, if we don't really treat it like it's something important, eventually down the road somewhere, you're going to screw things up and things are going to fall apart. And
100%.
And so we just have to pay attention to the whole situation. Those relationships have to be important to us. As important, lots of times we treat our kids like those are important relationships. We got to treat our relationship like it's the most important relationship, and everything else will fall in place. If our personal relationship with our spouse is the most important thing in our life, our kids, I promise you, are going to be right there with
happy. 100%. So let's talk about your memorabilia business. Where did that come from? I mean, it's so crazy as we have so many things aligned. I ran a memorabilia business for like 5 years, 6 years.
Oh, really?
And I got, my office is packed. Like my basement, I got like, if you actually go to, I have on my history line, you'll see like celebrities we met and stuff. Like I used to do the memorabilia business for about 5-6 years. I ran a memorabilia business. We used to do sit down signs with like hockey players and baseball players and celebrities and all that stuff. So it's crazy. We have so many little things business-wise aligned, but when did that all start with you?
Well, so I think that's just another thing that has to do with entrepreneurs. Like even looking at your wall behind you, I love the wall behind you. It's amazing. Us as entrepreneurs, we want to find our way as close to, we don't know these people, but we know they've done great things. And we want those great things in our life for us too. And so we want to align ourselves with them, whether that's reading their books or watching their interviews or, just being close to them in some way. And so we don't necessarily see it as memorabilia for us. That's not like what the reason why we do it.
Yeah.
I think what's so exciting for us is that you'll never be closer to a person like Thomas Edison or Steve Jobs or Nikola Tesla or Abe Lincoln. How you can be closer to Abraham Lincoln than holding a letter that he had in his hand at one time. It's a special moment when you're sitting there and you're holding a letter in your hand and you're really thinking about that, 150 years ago, Abraham Lincoln was standing somewhere, holding this letter in his hand, the same exact letter that I'm holding in my hand. And it's just a special moment. And so we knew that if we could connect that, I think entrepreneurs are very keen and self-aware and understand that meaning. And if you can connect that, help entrepreneurs connect those dots, we get a lot from that. We get energy from those types of things. So what we wanted to do was, I knew I was getting energy from that. So me and my wife had both kind of had that in the past. We had our own little pieces that we had just owned personally. And I remember, I'd have some of these pieces hanging. I had a couple of them hanging on my wall, but I had a lot of them in the safe, just sitting in my safe. And so I would show her and we'd talk about it. And I was like, oh, look at this letter, from Lincoln, or look at this Thomas Edison letter. I had a couple, like a bunch of different things. And different, boxers of the past and, just different things that people kind of connected me for my own personal reasons to other people, great leaders of the past. And we would talk about this. And I remember we were sitting down watching a show at my old house, and we were watching Man on Wire, and just talking about how this man, Philippe Petit, had walked between these two buildings, in New York. If anybody doesn't know the story, it's an incredible documentary called Man on Wire. And we're just like, wow, how inspiring that this person has to inspire people. The fact that this guy had this dream to walk between these two buildings on a wire, and so much so that he, dedicated every waking moment for 2 years to, getting all the things he needed to do to get up on this building in the middle of the night, run a wire between the two, twin towers, and then literally walk between these two twin towers for like 2 hours, while people are looking up at this guy doing this, and only for his, mostly for his personal gratification, just so that he could say he did it. And I'm like, dude, that's like all of us, like as entrepreneurs, that's how we're all like, I want to start this business. I want to make it successful, just to prove that to all the people who said I couldn't do it, that I could do it. And prove that I could make it successful. And so I just saw the lessons in that. And we were talking about it between us, me and her. And we said, what if we could like get pieces, something to help people remember those moments. so that they could be inspired by those same things that those guys were inspired by, and get some inspiration from those moments, from those people who achieve such great things.
Yeah.
Because many times we're in a place where we don't believe that we're great. We don't believe that we can do those great things. And somehow you got to humanize them, humanize those moments to show that these guys are just regular people, just like us. They got driven by a certain something, and we can all be those people. We just have to find what drives us and what pushes us and what excites us.
So you're always on the hunt for, do people at this point come to you to sell things, or you guys are always on the hunt just for things like, because it's not, I mean, you're talking about 100, it's not like an autograph. You're talking about one-off documentaries and like letters and checks and different.
Right.
So, I mean, these don't not come very often. So where you guys go to find them? How often are you getting them?
Yeah, there's specialty auctions we follow up through, and we're part of like Christie's and Sotheby's, Heritage auctions and R&R and all these different auctions that are out there that we are a part of, members of. Yeah, and we just stay a part of all those auctions. We always get all their catalogs and look through their online stuff, and when you're a part of them, you get to get into the back end and you get to see all those pieces. So. We've been to a few physical auctions, and a lot of them are online now because of the whole
of
thing,
course,
but mostly we like to, we've gotten pieces from Germany and England, and
it's pretty, we order pretty amazing,
find things all over the world, Japan, China, all these places all over the world. We found pieces, and it's just a way of connecting, and we like something that we preferably want. Sometimes the only way you can get something is to get anything from them because they're really hard to find. But of course we prefer to have something that is more intimate, a letter where they're speaking about the hardships in their business or their life, trying to show their human side. And I see things like we have like a patent letter from Thomas Edison. We recently sold a letter where Thomas Edison was talking about the light bulb, which is
that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I mean, if he even mentions the light bulb, like that letter automatically is $50,000, at least.
It's crazy. Yeah,
and it goes up from there. So you have contracts like Steve Jobs recently sold a little thing that he had scratched out to a kid where he said, "You're going to be the first generation to grow up with computers, treat it well," or something like that. And then he signed it. That piece went for like $800,000, so it's like, who knows, and their investments, that's another great thing. So what we do is we frame them with a picture of the person and one of their most famous quotes. And we frame them, this is a $2,000 framing job that we're putting on these things. It's a really nice piece. So it's not like your tchotchke stuff that you see in some of these memorabilia shops. This is a really nice letter with, or something from them. Sometimes it's a letter, sometimes it's less, but something to help you know that this person actually connect with them.
I got two more questions, quick questions before we were.
That's the billionairecollection.com too.
Billionaire. I'm gonna put all the links.
For anybody who wants to see what we're doing, the billionairecollection.com. And it's really just, there's something for everybody on there. We have everything from like, I think it starts at around $3,000 and it goes all the way up to $300,000.
Love it. Let's talk quickly about your podcast. I got one more question. Then I have one last question to end it off. So your podcast, Purdy and Punk, when did it start? I know you've had a little time in between right now because life has been busy, as we talked about before, but this is something you guys want to continue on for a while? Like, this is something you guys plan to keep growing?
Oh yeah. We're going to keep the podcast going because we feel like that, I almost feel like that's the place that we feel most at home. Just being able to talk to people and kind of be who we are. In fact, some of our favorite ones are just doing our personal podcasts. Where we don't have anybody that we're interviewing. Those are always harder because we always feel like we have to be on point.
Of course.
You're interviewing somebody. It's really, you got to make it about them. It's not about you guys. So it's always fun when we're just talking, bantering back and forth about a subject. That's always fun for us. And I think that, we just want to show people that everybody has, we're all going to have hard times in our relationships, but when you're in love and you see yourself with this person, that you have to find a way to make it about you guys, and you have to find a way to find that you would rather, in a lot of ways, like we always want to win, right?
Yeah.
But do you want to win the battle or win the war? And for us, it's like we want to win the war together. Yeah. And so we're trying to help couples. We're not perfect. We make mistakes. And I know people sometimes look at us like, these guys, we don't have all the answers. Yeah. We're working through those answers as we talk. And I see sometimes people get on there and talk about their relationship, and they're like dictating all this information, like, this is what you need to do, and that's how you need to do it. Yeah. And I'm like, wow, that's not us. Because when we talk through on our podcast, sometimes we talk about what we should do and what we'd like to do, but it's always a moving target. We're never going to be perfect. We're always it's always, but I think we try things that don't work.
Yeah, but I love that and that's one thing I try to be as authentic as you possibly can, even through my social media. It's just me with my kids. I think authenticity is what people are gravitating to a lot more, because everybody's fed up of seeing people pose with a fake car or rent a jet. I mean, authenticity, it really drives people, and being real and seeing the day-to-day life, because you could relate to that. So I think what you're saying is actually what's going to help grow the podcast to like certain levels, because people want the authenticity, right? People want to be able to relate to that, because you go there with all the right answers. It might feel good for a podcast or two to listen, but after a few, it's the same shit over and over, right? So being able to be authentic and really talk about issues you guys are going through, or talk about stuff in a real realm of things, I think is more special. So I like that part of it.
Yeah. I just know we can't do anything other than that. It's like, I'm going to be, if I come off like I have all the answers, it's going to be very inauthentic, because I don't have all the answers.
No, I love it.
I make mistakes every day. Like sometimes my wife will call me, pig-headed, or she'll call me, she'll tell me like, like you need to be mindful of this, or, it's like, I'm always making mistakes.
Yeah.
I'm a walking mistake most of the time. She's so much smarter than me in so many ways. She's great with our kids. We're always trying to work to be better. Like I'm never going to be the best version of myself. I want to be better. I want to keep becoming better and better.
Yeah, I love it.
And I think we're always everybody should have that
100%.
And anytime you speak to anybody who thinks that they have all the answers, they're
full of shit.
Yeah. They're going to be, I don't want to say that, but yeah, I mean, some are great people, but like I watch them, I go, wow, if they have all the answers, I'd really like to be a fly on the windscreen inside their house and see how things really run. If that's how they run all the time, then all the power to them, man.
Yeah, I hear it. One last question. If something were to happen to you today, in a few words, how would you want to be remembered, described by your loved ones? I got to be excited.
Because, I think in so many ways, like I'm so far from this. It's sad, like sometimes I just want to be so much better. Ooh, I get emotional just thinking about it. I think it's a reminder that how you act speaks louder than your words. Your actions speak louder than your words, because I always want the people in my life to know that they're first. And in so many ways, sometimes I don't do that, because I feel like that the things that I'm doing are putting them first. Like when you run to your business, like, do they know how important it is that I get this done, or that I do this, or that I'm here for this meeting? It's like, these are all important to our business, that if this doesn't come together, that we won't be able to continue this lifestyle, or we won't be able to do this, or we won't be able to fly there. When the truth is, what's most important is your family, right?
Yeah.
But sometimes the things that we do don't speak those words.
Yeah.
And so I feel like I'm still getting better at this, and I still need, and I have a long way to go, but I want my family to always believe that they are first in my life in everything that I do, and that I would throw it all away in 1 second so that I could, be with them.
Yeah,
and I just want them to always know that. But sometimes I don't always do those things, things that speak those truths.
Yeah.
And I think all of us as entrepreneurs, it's a very selfish thing sometimes, being an entrepreneur, because you have to almost be selfish to do what we do, because it is a war mentality. You are in a foxhole taking bullets, rounds come flying over your head constantly. Yeah. And you're in a firefight constantly. And if you don't act like that, you'll get killed. It's a thing that will kill you. It will, I mean, not literally, but it will kill your company. You'll wake up and you won't have a company anymore.
Oh, it's also the stress, anxiety. It could kill you, right? There's different sides of it too.
Yeah, it could. Yeah. You got a lot of stress and a lot of things going on. And it's like, how do I not bring that home with me when I'm with my kids? And we spend all of our time together. So we run a business a little bit different than everybody else.
Yeah. Remember we talking about
we're lucky enough that I can be at home, and I didn't want to have an office. And I've had that situation where I have 200 employees in a huge office, and I kind of wanted to run things different this time, so, and purposely, like, a lot of people are like, oh, I want a scalable business there. I can make, 400. There's something to, like, I decided in this part of my life, I don't want to run. I mean, I like scalable businesses, and I still mentally argue with myself about it sometimes. But I do like running a business where, we sell $100,000 piece here. We sell a $50,000 piece there. We sell a $200,000 piece. It's like, it's kind of, it's a here and there business, and it's not the same scalable type business that I used to run. I did run a business where we were doing hundreds of millions of dollars, and that was fun. Yeah. But I wanted to do something different with my kids this time.
No worries.
So this is, it just, things have changed, but I love that. I want my family to know that I love them more than anything in the world. And I hope all my actions always speak louder than words. And I think everybody can find their own version of that. I just think we have to be intentional when we do it. You have to be intentional about your family and be intentional about your relationship with your wife.
Love it. We're going to end it off like that. It's been almost about 2.5 hours. So I appreciate your time. And on all our show notes, I'm going to put all the information about your podcast, your business, about you. One last question. Quick question before you got to go. TapOut, are you still involved with the company?
No. So I sold the company. I sold the company in 2010. I stayed on for like 5 years.
Oh, you did stay on for a while. Okay.
Yeah. And then I left in like 2016.
Okay.
So I still work as an advisor for them, but no, I'm not there full time.
Okay. Very good. This has been awesome, brother. I appreciate you doing this. Appreciate you taking your time. And like I said, on our show notes, I'm going to put all the information how to get a hold of you. And man, this is awesome. And like I said this before, and if you ever come to Toronto, Canada, my house is open to you, and I'd love to take you around.
Thanks. I love Toronto.
Yeah, Toronto's a great little city. I was born and raised here. I love it. It's a great city. But thank you so much, brother.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me, Jeff.
That's a wrap for today. I want to thank our guest, Dan, for taking time. It was an incredibly busy schedule to be a big guest on the Jeff Knows Inc. podcast. Great conversation. I hope you guys enjoyed it as much as I have. Like all weeks, spread the word. Tell your friends, tell your family. Let everyone know about this podcast. We're trying to build something special here. Leave a review. Myself, my staff, we love spending time reading the reviews. Until next week, guys, keep moving forward.